Week 2 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few defense DST units I looked at off the wire this week. The first one, the Los Angeles Rams. Good matchup coming up at Tennessee, where obviously their offense is going to have trouble this season with Cam Ward, the rookie quarterback, going through growing pains, and not a lot of options on that offense. Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard. So this Ram DST as a good streaming option this week. They're available in tons of fantasy leagues right now. Is this Los Angeles Ram DST? 73%. So week 1 versus a good offense, 9 points allowed only, 3 sacks versus Houston, interception, fumble recovery. And week 2, like I said, it's a very good matchup at the Tennessee Titans. And then week 3, though, tough matchup at Philly. Says a 1-week streaming option at the Tennessee Titans. I like the Rams this week, and definitely a team to go out there and add. The next DST is the Green Bay Packers, surprisingly out there in 54% of fantasy leagues. I know on paper it was a very tough matchup versus the Detroit Lions, but they took care of business pretty easily versus the Lions in week 1. 13 points allowed, 4 sacks and an interception. Decent matchup versus the Commanders. I know they have a good offense. Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz, obviously Bill Krosky, Merritt in the backfield. But I think Green Bay, as Micah Parsons learns this playbook more and can get to the quarterback and gets his stamina back, where he didn't do much during training camp, this defense could get better. And I think Green Bay, even in a tougher matchup where they just came off a tough matchup, could have put in a good game. Another home game as well in week 2 versus the Commanders. And I like this Green Bay unit once again, and they're available in 54% of fantasy leagues. Next DST is the San Francisco 49ers. A lot of guys left off season, a lot of injuries and turnover over the last couple seasons as well. And they, I thought, had a decent week 1. Was this 49er DST at Seattle in a victory. 13 points allowed, a sack, 2 fumble recoveries. So week 2, a great matchup at the New Orleans Saints, where that offense is a mess with Spencer Rattler in their quarterback. I know on paper they got some players, Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara, obviously Rashid Shaheed, but San Francisco, I think, could go in there, take care of business, and it could be a similar type of game like we saw in week. San Francisco keeps his team in the mid-teens, low 20s at New Orleans. Like I said, this defense still has some players on it. Fred Warner, obviously, Nick Bosa, one of the better pass rushers in the league. And this week in New Orleans, after they came off a bad performance versus a mediocre Arizona defense, San Francisco, a great streaming option and a great defense, obviously, for fantasy owners to go out there and play. Next DST is the mentioned Seattle Seahawks. So the Seahawks, I thought, did a decent job versus San Francisco. I know George Kittle left the game early. I know Jawan Jennings left the game early with the shoulder injury. And they finished 17 points allowed, a sack, 2 interceptions, and a block kick. In week 2 here at Pittsburgh, I know on paper, after what we saw in week 1, Pittsburgh going to New York at the Jets and put up 34 points in that one. You don't expect Seattle's defense to go out there and make plays. But I think Pittsburgh, Rodgers was very, obviously, he admitted it as well, fired up and wanted to stick it to his former team. Seattle came off, I thought, a decent ball game versus San Francisco. And in week 2 with Pittsburgh, I don't think Pittsburgh's going to go out there and score over 30 points. I think mid-teens, low 20s is a possibility. But the thing with Rodgers, if you get a hand on him, he's going to go down, where his mobility, for the most part, is pretty much gone at 41 years old. So Seattle available in tons of fantasy leagues right now, where their DST, that I think, could be a solid ad this week. And not many people, I think, are going to go on the wire and add them. After, like I said, what we saw, Pittsburgh put up 34 points at the Jets, is going to shy away teams to go out there and get the Seahawk DST. So definitely a good ad this week. And the final DST is the Indianapolis Colts. So this Colt DST went out there and they shut down a good offense in the Miami Dolphins. I know their offensive line isn't good, but when you got Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane, Jalen Waddle in that offense, you would think they'll put up more than 8 points. Indianapolis, like I said, got the job done in week 2. It's not a great matchup versus Denver, but we just did see Bo Nix turn the football over 3 times in week 1 versus the Tennessee Titans. So week 1 versus Miami, 8 points allowed, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, a fumble recovery. And this Indianapolis DST, they play better at home over the last few seasons than they have on the road. And this offense looked good for Indianapolis, 33 points they put up. Obviously, that's not going to be the weekly thing for them. But like I said, this DST plays good at home. Bo Nix turned the football over 3 times. And if in deeper leagues you want to take a chance on the Colts DST, I would, and they're available in 99% of fantasy leagues. That's a few defense DST units I looked at off the wire for week 2 of the fantasy football season.